Hey guys, Corey from Aquarium Co-op. Another live stream. Here we go. All right, so I've got some things I want to cover today. Get these little things out of the way, so to speak. I think it is official. We're going to go with one live stream every Sunday. The more I thought about it, two is just not manageable because what it does is I have to start getting ready for a live stream at least 30 minutes before it goes live. So, obviously I'm on West Coast time, Pacific time. So that means my day starts at 11:30 starting for the live streams. And then, I shoot basically at noon we start. It's 2 hours right there, or an hour and a half at least. So it's 2 o'clock. Then I want to fit some lunch in. So let's say by the time you unwind from the live stream and you kind of get back into the house and you eat, it's 3 o'clock. And then I know at 4:30 I got to start getting ready for the next session again. And so basically I can't really do any projects. I can maybe feed a little bit of fish and stuff. And then it's another, 2-hour stream after that. So 11:30 to 7 every Sunday for my day off, so to speak, was being a little bit brutal. And so I think one's going to do it. Plus, I'm going to be on KG Tropical's show on Thursday. So it's still plenty of content and things like that. And I think we've worked it out where we'll be able to have the show with him and stuff also go to podcast. I know he's going to put on his podcast links and maybe even mine as well. So still be lots of content for you guys who are using us for water changes and commutes to work and things like that. So, yeah. Next thing, it's been working out good. I've been putting the questions together, but up above me here, the ask@aquariumcoop.com. That's an email address to send questions that aren't important. People keep sending important questions, and I have to answer them there. Send those to the actual website if your fish is dying or something like that. If it's not important, though, and you have a good topic idea or something like that, go ahead and send it above. And what I do is I sort that into categories, and then I'm going to make some filler episodes. So eventually, like when I'm at the aquatic experience, obviously, I won't be able to go live on that Sunday. I'll be sitting on a plane, but I could have this awesome 2-hour episode of me answering questions, and they'll be based on topics. So maybe right now, seems like a lot of planted tank questions are coming in, but also there's African cichlids, and then there's a general and bettas. And so once I get a big cache of questions, then I can go ahead and film that episode and have it cover for heaven forbid if I was sick or something like that. So. Let's see what else I've got going on here before we start banging out questions left and right. Oh, yes. Let me share my screen with you guys here. Let me get set up. Right here, yeah. So, share my screen. It's going to look weird for a second, but you should now be able to see the website, and we've got a sale going on select items. I just installed all this new software and stuff like that this week. I've been working on the website in the background. But basically, there's a sale that goes on till the end of tonight, midnight my time. And you can, while you're listening to this live stream, you can hunt around on the website and see what's for sale. And if we hit the back button here, you'll see these little sale icons on some of the items that are on for sale or on sale. And then I also added a new thing that some people have already actually ordered. I haven't even announced it yet, so thanks for that. But I also have a plant packages thing now. Now, I got to take some better pictures and stuff, but this is all, I was just getting it up there, not necessarily, launching it, so to speak. But, we've got the low light plant package, and we also have the medium light plant package. And the way this works is you order basically a grab bag of plants. Now, they're very popular in my store. We take plants that we just have too many of and things like that, and we throw them in a bag, and we sell them cheap at the store. Now, lots of people see that pop up on Facebook and stuff like that, and they're like, ooh, can I get in on that? So now I've created a way you can. So basically, for $50, we'll send out 8 plants. For $100, we'll send out 18 plants. And obviously that's at a discount, but we get to pick what the plants they are. And so right now I've got wisteria that's nice and tall and huge, and if it doesn't sell in the next few days, it's going to be way too big for my sales tank. And so that'd be a great one for me to be shipping out. Also, we're selling so many plants at a time now that I have to order in huge quantities. So it might be 30 to 50 of any one plant. And on any given week, you might go, wow, we sold all 50 Vallisneria, but we didn't sell a single, banana plant or something like that. And so this will allow me to kind of fill in some of those gaps and go, okay, well, we're overstocked on this. I'm going to order them either way each week. And so it's a way for you guys to save money. and a way just to get your feet wet and go, well, I don't know what plants I want yet, but I could buy this low light package and get started. So yeah, so we'll turn that off here and we'll get you back to normal view. Should be just me now again. Let's see if there's any more little announcements I've got before we get underway here. Oh yes, so on the website, you guys can leave reviews, and I'm going to show you because I really want this to build up because I think it'd be something really cool. And that is like, especially for shirts and things like that. If you guys take a picture of you guys wearing the shirt, and I've got all the software installed, so this should work seamlessly for you. Let's see here. If I go to miscellaneous, I think we'll pull up the shirts. Yeah, they're on sale. All right. But when you scroll down here, you can see, these are people leaving reviews, and you can do this as well. And I thought it'd be cool to have lots of people in the shirts and out in nature and just doing cool things. And you can do that with other stuff too. Like I know on some of the newbies and stuff like that, people are posting pictures of the plants in their tank and stuff like that. So that just helps because it really not only helps me, obviously I'll sell some more, but it helps other hobbyists that are unsure. Like if they don't know what they're gonna get, it's really nice if you go to, I think like some Java Ferns have some pictures here. I think it was Windalov on wood maybe. Let's see if I'm wrong. I can't find it. Of course on camera I should have planned a little better. There we go. So now you can see real life picture of like this is in this gentleman's tank. So that shows you like what I actually shipped out, so that it helps overall. It's kind of a user system where everyone can help each other and go, oh, this stuff's garbage, or oh, this is amazing. So all right, let's get back to normal mode here, and I think that's it. I think that's all the little things I got. Yep, I announced the sale, the plant box, leaving reviews, the Ask an Aquarium Co-op, and the one live stream a week. That's all I had to get through. So now I can start banging out some questions here. Let's see. It's true. Michael's Fish Room is one of the channels I do follow because he does things like I do it. He's always constantly tinkering and building his fish room, but he does have a whole video not dedicated, but wearing my shirt. That's true. So check out his channel if you haven't. He's around 400 subscribers, and I've been following him for probably 6 months now. I don't even know. All right, King of Cichlids. Let's see. He's answering a question, so that's not a question for me. Let me find where... It's not butter. Oh my god, it says $50 for 8 plants seems a bit much. You should throw in small sample of my Easy Green. Won't happen. People come up with suggestions like this all the time, and when you don't ship hundreds of packages, you wouldn't know. But if you put a bottle of Easy Green into that package, it's going to beat up all the plants on the way there. Like it would just come to you in a pulp. So you'd actually have to put the Easy Green in another box inside of that box and keep it from moving during shipment to not crush all the other plants. And so, it takes quite a bit to actually make something like that happen. And, this brings up another point. Half the reason I can do the 8 plants for $50, or half the reason you guys might want it, is I can send you plants that I don't list on the website. There's, I might have 50, 60 different varieties of plants in my store, but you're going, well, you only list like 10. Well, it's because I can't get a lot of them in quantity, like things like tiger lotuses and Madagascar laces and Apontigeton bovinianus and all these things that, sure, I can order 10 or 15, but they also sell really quick in the store, and so I can't list them online either. But, I want to say 8 plants for $50 comes out, decent. Let me do the math here. Because I remember doing the math. Yeah, $6.25 per plant for plants that I normally sell for $7.99 and up. So, when you start getting $12.99 plants in the same box, I think that's more than fair. But, vote with your money. If you don't think it's a good price, don't buy it. But I'm done talking about the website. I want to talk about more questions. Let's see here. James Osborne says, what would you recommend as a starting planted tank, plants and fish in a 55-gallon? I would say if you could hold off a little bit, I've got this whole series on plants coming out, but I would say balance it around your light, and then some decent cleanup crew, like maybe some snails and autos and things like that. That kind of helps you get a jump start, and usually you want things that Community fish just make it easier, so tetras and stuff like that. But you could do Africans and things like that. Obviously, I've done some videos on how you can start pulling some of that stuff off, but that's the easiest way. So, yeah. Let's see. Destiny's Pet Project says, I acquired a 55-gallon tank stand. It's made of solid wood. It seems old but very sturdy. Do I think it is still usable and reliable for a 55-gallon tank stand? Most likely, yeah. I mean, if it's made out of solid wood, it's probably, good to go. I mean, I can't know without seeing it or anything like that, but the older the stand is, that actually the better the wood they would have used, so it's probably better than something you can buy. So yeah, I would say totally try it out. Matthew DLR says, which is easier to care for, dwarf crayfish or red cherry shrimp, and which one would live better in a community tank? Well, with dwarf crayfish, I'm assuming we're going to talk about like the dwarf CPO, the Mexican orange crayfish, and then cherry shrimp, obviously. It's kind of a catch-22 because cherry shrimp will do less harm to any fish in the aquarium, but could be hunted more, whereas a dwarf CPO crayfish gets a little bigger, but could do some damage if it wanted to. Not that they're known to do damage, but I lean towards red cherry shrimp because I just like them better. Also, like in my state, crayfish are illegal, so I can't even keep them. But that's how I would analyze that. Let's see here. Amanda Jean says, anything I can do to lower nitrates besides plants when the source of water already has high nitrates? There are some things. They're not, I'm not going to say practical, but the first thing I would ask is, like, why are we not using plants? And if you say, like, my fish eat them, there's still ways to use plants. Let's say an algae scrubber. Let's say growing bamboo out of the top of the tank, or moving some water up to a refugium like they do in saltwater, or down to a refugium, up or down. You could use plants to do it. Outside of that, you've got things like some nitrogen or nitrate absorbing not chemicals, but medias, whether it's in a pad form or, a granular form. There's also really advanced things like an ozone reducer, which no one's going to use, really not in a commercial setup. And then you could build something called like a denitrifying tower. And what that is it's like you get a small pump that pumps some water, and you're going to pump the water outside the tank. It's kind of building a filter. And you get like a 4-inch piece of PVC, and you make that thing like 6 feet tall. You pump the water into the bottom, and by the time the water gets about halfway, all the beneficial bacteria, which you fill it with something like lava rock or bioballs or something, but halfway up, the beneficial bacteria has used up all the oxygen, and then the second half of it grows denitrifying bacteria, which thrives in anaerobic conditions where there's no oxygen, and so that second part would actually consume nitrates for you. But most people might go, well, this tank's in my living room. That's not an option. So without more info, it's going to be hard. But I would say plants are the easiest way. And that's, but if it depends on how high nitrates are. If there are 20 parts per million, you can still do water changes, and it's not going to kill fish. But if it's like 50 parts per million, I'd be afraid to even drink that water. So Chad Johnson says 1.5 to 2 inches deep enough is it deep enough substrate for dwarf sag, crypts, and vals? The answer is yes, as long as you can get them to keep under the gravel. So it's plenty for like the physical growing of the plant, but you might go, oh, it keeps going up. So you could use like a lead weight or something like that. But I definitely have done some very shallow plantings before. And sometimes what you can do, like, so with the runner plants, so like the dwarf sage and the vallisneria and stuff, build up a little corner that's a little thicker maybe in the corner, plant your plant there, and then it itself will start running, and it plants itself, so you don't have to worry about that problem. All right, next one. Tank Addiction says, want to try German rams. Any suggestions? I would say, first and foremost, keep them hot, at least 82 degrees, somewhere between 84 and 86, depending on if you're breeding them and stuff like that, but I'd say 82 is the minimum, personally. And then don't bloat them. It's very easy to bloat rams with like too much bloodworms and high protein or protein rich foods. They do really well on dry foods and then frozen brine shrimp and things like that. Let's see. There was a question. There we go. Brian asks, "Good afternoon, Corey. How are you? I'm doing well. I have a question. What is my personal opinion on jewel cichlids? I think they're one of the most beautiful fish ever because if you've ever seen like a breeding male, they're just on fire. They're amazing. They're also, in my opinion, relatively easy to breed. Also a plus. The problem is, out of 100 people that own them, about 97 of them would say like, oh man, they're so aggressive, I can't keep them with anything else. Oh man, it's brutal. So you end up doing a species tank, whether you want to or not. You might start off with something else and go, oh man, who knew this jewel cichlid was going to kill my Oscar and my Firemouth and my Jack Dempsey and, you know. So I do think they're amazing, but I think they're misrepresented in fish stores where they don't really explain what you're getting yourself into. Now, if you want to set up like a biotope or just a species aquarium, they're amazing. And I might do that because I've never bred jewel cichlids intentionally, just like I never did convicts intentionally, but that would be a fun project because it's a good looking fish and I would enjoy keeping it at least for a little while. So, yeah. The other thing a lot of people don't know is the West African cichlid. So, yeah. Anyway. Let's see here. Let me grab some more questions. Jacob Thomas says, can I put mondo grass and pennywort together? The mondo grass itself is not an aquatic plant, and so it's a bog plant, so it basically wants its leaves out of the water and its roots in water. The pennywort, yes, you could definitely grow that underwater. It can also grow in a bog plant. If I'm missing that you're asking, you know, can I do this in like a terrarium or something like that, I apologize, but I'm just assuming it's for an aquarium. Let's see here. James Osbon, he says, video suggestions. How to convert, he said concert, but I'm assuming convert, a hang-on-back filter into a filter that uses better media. That's been suggested to me through the ask@aquariumcoop.com, and so it is put off into my, there's a folder called Video Ideas, and I almost ordered it today, but I'm waiting for like an Emperor 400 or something with bio wheels to walk into my store. Like somehow I get a hold of one, like people getting out of the hobby or something. So I don't have to buy one to instantly show people how to hot rod it and stuff like that. So, but it is on the to-do list. Let's see. Shuri Yi says, I was thinking about getting some guppies and letting them self-populate. Would I have to cull any deformed fry or could I just let them be? Depends on what your goals are. I mean, culling the deformed fry will keep the population much more robust long term. But if you were like, let's say you were going to do guppies for like 2 years and then change what you're going to do, you wouldn't have to cull them because it wouldn't make that big of a difference, you know. So I don't know if you're asking the question like, oh, I really don't want to cull any fish, which a lot of people don't like doing that. I don't enjoy doing it. Or, you know, if you're like, I'm going to make this, you know, my living and I'm going to become a professional breeder, then it's like, well, you would have to cull. So, yeah. Gator Tracks Gaming says, what plants for a 75-gallon guppy tank? Depends on the light you have, but I would say dense plants, like the more dense it is, in fact, like in terms of like, you know, when the leaves are coming together, if they're always crisscrossing and, you know, it's this jungle, you'll get a lot more fry that'll, raise up in there. So, yeah. Let's see here. Samantha R says, I have Christmas moss attached to wood with super glue and white algae has started growing on the wood. Is there any way to treat the wood without killing the moss? Scrubbing with a toothbrush didn't work. Probably what's going on there, Samantha. You didn't say what type of wood, but manzanita wood and sometimes mopani wood. Those will kind of grow like this lichen fungus stuff that goes away long term, but in the short term, usually you'd rely on things like on mono shrimp, snails, stuff like that to eat it for you. It's not harmful to the aquarium, it's just unsightly. And it's kind of one of those things that takes up to a month to go away. You could just soak it in another 5-gallon bucket and let it, do its thing there if you don't want to look at it. The other thing I'll address is if it's like on grape wood, like that's meant for reptiles and stuff, and it will never stop making that gross slough off stuff in an aquarium. So that's why grape wood doesn't work in an aquarium. Let's see here. Michael Tett says, what new breeding project am I most excited about? That's a good question. What do I have going that I really want to see? I think it's the Tropheus debosii I have. Just because I've only got 6 of them. And even yesterday I was thinking, maybe I should buy some more. Like, there's a chance I raise these up and they're all males. But I want to kind of take it from a group of 6 into a full colony just to show people that when you do Tropheus, you don't necessarily have to buy like an insane amount. You could breed your way there. It's not the easiest thing to do. I'm not going to say like, oh yeah, everyone's going to be able to do it. It's going to be easy. But I think that's the thing I'm most excited to play with. Renan asks, why do I prefer Mabu puffers over Fa'aka puffers? Mostly, Fa'aka puffers tend to be a little more ornery and tolerate tank mates less than Mabu puffers. And then I like how big a Mabu puffer gets. And then I'd be lying if I wasn't saying that I like that Mabu puffers are rare. Back when I started keeping them a while ago, they seemed more rare than they are now. But I basically started keeping one, and then I just fell in love with it. Now I just love the species. And I actually have never kept a Fa'aka puffer in my personal care. And what that means is like never at home or in a display tank at the store. They've always come in and been like, yeah, we're going to sell this to someone who wants it. But I've never kept one of my own accord. So, I don't know that I don't like Fa'aka puffers. I just like Mabu puffers better. If a Mabu puffer didn't exist or I couldn't house one, I probably would keep a Fa'aka puffer if I was limited on size. Let's see. Tommy Tank says, do fish and fry coming in from the outside deck ponds need to be quarantined? Ideally, that answer is yes. In practice, most people probably won't, and your risk is fairly low. But, if you've got, let's say you bred, I'm trying to think of something, some stir-by corridors outside, and you've got, 50 discus in your display tank at home and you've thrown those corridors, like that risk would be like, well, you should probably quarantine. But for most people, they're going to go, I just got a few things, it'll be okay. And for most part, it would. Yeah. Let's see here. Scrolling back up to catch some of these. Michael Tess says, what water parameters do gouramis prefer? Typically, it depends on the gourami, but if you're just keeping them as a pet, right around 7.0 pH, moderate hardness. If you're spawning something like licorice gouramis or something like that, pH in the 5s, but if you're just keeping it, that's a different thing. Jacob Thomas says, if I have a 500-gallon pond, can I use a 250-gallon filter and a 300-gallon filter? So you're probably, I'm assuming you're asking filters that are rated for those. And the answer is yes. Filters really, it depends on the load, not the volume of water. So, you want to match how much filtration do I need to how much food do I put into that water, not so much this thing is rated to handle that. You can kind of watch other videos and stuff on my channel and kind of learn more about that. But, there's no governing agency on what one filter can handle 250 and the other next one can't. I'm trying to find the beginning of this question, and that's like nitrites 0.25 out of the tap. I don't know what the original question is, so I'm just going to talk about it. But I myself wouldn't be that worried about it. And the reason being is I run mostly Planet tanks and things like that. And even if I didn't, 0.25 nitrite in an established aquarium should be able to be processed very quickly. If I, maybe I'd have a little bit more filtration if I was running into that problem, and I wouldn't do. The other thing is, so let's say a 0.25 in the tap water, and I change 50% on this tank back here, it's only going to be I'm trying to think, 0.125, right? Yeah, 0.125 ppm in there, which is so low that only on the most of sensitive species would it be a problem. Let's see here. Brick Addiction says, hey, Corey, I want to know if this plan was a bit overstocked. 2 platies, 2 mollies, 4 guppies, 3 coolie loaches, and 4 something. All I can tell you, Brick Addiction, is I answered this question for you on the YouTube comments already. And, this is kind of a general thing. When you're asking questions, form like a pretty good question when you leave a comment, because a lot of times people just go like, they'll start the question with like, how do plants? And then I gotta be like, well, what do you mean? And then they ask another question like, I'd like to grow plants. How do I do that? And then it's like, okay, well, what part of that did you want to know how to do? And so a lot of times people are just like probing question after question after question after question, and I get shorter and shorter with the answers because it's like it's a never-ending thing. And so, like with Brick Addiction, I'm just using you an example. Don't get me wrong, I answer all your questions, and I still will. But, it kind of started out as like, how about this stocking level for this 10-gallon? How about this? How about this? How about this? How about this? And eventually it's like I've gone over like 5 different scenarios, and it's like, well, really what I want to say is like, come to me when you're like, oh man, this is the list. Like, I'm really this close to spending my money on this group of fish. What do you think? Because right now, a lot of people just kind of switch and like, turns out today I'm doing African cichlids, and then today I'm doing this. And it's like, well, I just can't help everyone talk through every scenario. But if you're really serious about one scenario, I definitely want to help you. So with the 2 platies, 2 mollies, 4 guppies, 3 coolie loaches, and 4 of something else, you're going to run into problems with the 2 platies, the 2 mollies, and the 4 guppies. The guppies are going to lose the food war. They're not going to get nearly as much food as the platies and the mollies. The 2 platies and 2 mollies breaks my rule of never do 2 fish ever, because you're going to get a male and a female or 2 males, and they're going to harass each other nonstop. You're going to get one that dominates the other, and mollies can be fairly aggressive, especially during feeding time. And when you get fish that are 4 inches kind of ruling the roost, there's not going to be a lot of leftover food for others. So, yeah. Okay, and the last part was 3 cory cats and 3 nerite snails. Yeah, I would say the 3 cory cats, the 3 nerites, and the coolie loaches, all those should play just fine. It's the 2 mollies, 2 platies, and 4 guppies that are not a good idea together. I would say pick one of those livebearers and go with that. Grits Fish Tanks asks, how many Mabuna can I keep in a 29-gallon? It depends on the Mabuna first. And I would say, in my opinion, 1 species can be kept in a 29-gallon tank. And so my favorite species to be kept in a 29-gallon tank is Pseudotropheus celosi, because you'll get the males that are blue and black striped and the females that are yellow. And so it looks like you have 2 different species, and yet it's all the same. In fact, I'm thinking about doing a one tank at a time series about setting up specifically a Pseudotropheus celosi tank. Let's see. HDJC86 asks, do ram's horn snails eat moss? A follow-up to the Making Money series. They don't eat moss unless it was in distress and dying, or possibly, and I've never run into this scenario, but if you're starving the tank so much that like fish were dying and stuff like that, so snails were just getting nothing, they might start consuming plants. But in general, I use lots of ram's horn snails in with my Java moss tanks, and they do amazing. But a lot of times Java moss is hard to keep going healthy because people, just don't know how to do it, or they're putting way too much light on it, or there's way too much fertilizer or something like that. But in general, I would say ram's horns are going to do you more good than harm on that. Let's see. Carlos says, I have 8 emerald green cories and 1 autosynclus, and I still have brown reddish algae. I do fertilizer and highlight. Would a dwarf pleco or 2 help? Carlos, I would say watch my video on algae. That'll probably address that for you. But emerald green corydoras are not algae eaters. So basically you have 1 autosynclus, and it doesn't say how big the tank is. I assume it's a decent sized tank for 8 emerald green cories. Dwarf plecos may help on that, but realize their mouths will only allow them to do it on bigger surfaces, so like glass, flatter rocks, and some plants too, like Amazon swords. They tend to eat those, so I would say watch that video, and that'll probably help you a lot more. Tyler Klein asks, what's the best alkalinity for a discus tank? In my opinion, if we're talking about alkalinity, pretty much as you can get. You know, I would say I don't think I've ever had too much alkalinity. That's the buffering capacity of free ions before the pH changes. You know, now a lot of people, and I'm going to clarify this, mix up alkalinity and pH. If you're asking what the best pH for a discus tank is, it depends on the strain of discus you have. King of Cichlids says, hey Corey, I have a 40 to 50 gallon tank. I have 17 African cichlids. Can I put 3 more in? My maintenance is a partial every 2 days. It would depend on what type of African cichlids. It would depend on how big they are. And in general, my rule of thumb is never add African cichlids to other African cichlids unless you're adding 6 or more. And that's because typically the new guys get picked on and things like that, and it can be brutal. If you were going to do that, which I don't recommend, but if you were, I would rearrange all the tank decor and do a partial water change and feed your current Africans before, like, all that happens right before you introduce the new fish to give them the best chance of finding the lay of the land before they start getting, you know, kind of chased and stuff like that. Matthew asks, will cherry shrimp be eaten by tetras and swordtails, and how fragile are they when molting? Well, when molting, they're very soft, so they're pretty fragile then. Swordtails typically will eat shrimp. Swordtails are kind of a mean live bearer. Tetras, depending on the tetra, like a Congo tetra that gets 4 inches, yeah, it's going to gobble some down. But most things like neons, cardinals, rummy noses, they're, you know, fairly non-aggressive towards a shrimp. All right, I'm scrolling way down here. If I miss your questions, I apologize. The Silly Pancake asks, where did I get my super red angelfish? Did I grow them out, or did I buy them as an established pair? Kind of both. So I got them from a wholesaler. I bought all they had, and then sold them in the store, obviously. And I sent 12 home with a breeder, and then he ended up getting like 5 pairs out of 12 fish. This is one of the pairs. He unloaded them on me. I'm just seeing myself not having any time to actually raise them, and so they might go back to my store and just sell them because I'm not finding the time. Like, they're sitting there, and I know I'm like this close. I'm like, you know what? I put a little more food to these guys. They're gonna spawn, but then I'm going, I'm not even hatching live brine shrimp at the moment. Like, where am I gonna do this? Where am I gonna find the time? I'm trying to do this, and this project. And when I say projects, like, there's things I want to launch on the website. There's videos I want to get filmed. There's all these things, and what I don't want to do is go like, hey guys, look, I did this, I made them spawn, and then the next video, hey guys, look at this, I killed them all. Like, that's not very fun. So yeah, scroll down here. Angelfish with blue acaras, threadfin acaras, and bandit cichlids in a 150. Is it possible? Yeah, I think so. I think it's possible depending on how you set it up, but it doesn't seem unreasonable by any means. Let's see here. Neon Tetra asks, will platies eat cherry shrimp in a 29-gallon planted aquarium? The only other thing that will be in there will be tetras. Will they eat some? Yes. Can you set the tank up so that you still make a ton of shrimp? Yes. If you go back in some of my older videos, like fish room update videos, and I'm just pulling this off the top of my head, I'm going to say like somewhere between number 10 and 15, you can see the 40 breeders I had that had the Variatus platies and shrimp, and I was producing like thousands of shrimp, even with 4-inch, well, maybe not 3.5-inch platies in there. So it can definitely be done, but it all depends on how you're feeding and how the tank is set up. Toby asks if I have a saltwater tank. I do not. Gina Marie asked the question again. I never answered this shirt question. I haven't seen it yet. It's a little bit difficult to keep up on them. So ask it again, and if I see it, I'll answer it. Tommy Tank, do fish and fry coming in? Oh yeah, I answered that one. My bad. Would a haps from Lake Victoria be a good beginner fish? Not for you, but your girlfriend. I mean, maybe. I just don't think Victorians are good for beginners in general. Like, I remember the question from earlier, and I just haven't answered it yet, of like one fish for like a 29-gallon tank. One fish, you don't have to worry about aggression problems. But I feel like Victorians in general have a lot more aggression problems. So if it's just one fish, pick one you like, it'll work. That being said, you start trying to mix them, you're going to run into a lot of aggression problems most people aren't ready for. Carlos says, what do you recommend your clients for a beginner to intermediate cichlid tank using 55 to 75 gallons, impartial to Africans or New Worlds? I don't enjoy bickering or territorialism. How many and which? That question, I don't really advise people on a question like that, because that's like, it takes so long. I guess that's why. So it's like, let's imagine you ask your friend, you're like, I'm thinking about getting a pet. Which one should I get? Either A, I'm just going to tell you what I think is cool. Or B, I got to ask you like 50 questions to identify like what type of pet you should have. You know, so for instance, like with Carlos, I'd be like, well, what kind of pH do you have? That might lend something to it. Do you have any preference at all? Like, oh, I like colorful fish, or oh, I like fish that have behavior, or, you know, you already said you don't like bickering between them, and so that already there is going to limit a lot of the choices. I would say most times either A, you want to keep just one fish and go, yep, I have just a flower horn, or I have just this, you know, Midas, or something like that in your 55 to 75 gallon, or you're really describing a tank that's not cichlids. So yeah, because I mean, even when we start going for docile cichlids, like let's say discus and angels and things like that, all of them are going to bicker, so that becomes a problem. Let's see here. Scrolling down, I missed a bunch again, my bad. Oh, okay, Corey, this is from my wife. She wanted to know if you have a new shirt today and where you got it. Oh, and you answered it for me. Yep, this is a new shirt. This is it finally. Asks, my angelfish laid eggs. In your opinion, should I remove all the other fish in the tank so the parents can just do their thing with the fry, or start a fry tank and take them from the parents? It depends on how many tanks you got, I guess. I myself would probably just move the fry, because just because you move out all the fish doesn't mean those parents are going to raise their fry. They might raise them for a couple days and eat them. And then you've stressed out all those fish moving and stuff like that. So I personally would just move the eggs. Mama V2 asks, about to set up a 95-liter tank, and so it's 30 centimeters by, okay, I'm just going to do the math. 95 centimeters, basically centimeters. I can't even talk. Okay. 100 liters divided by 4 is like 25 gallons, roughly. Tank with an clear 50, and want to keep fancy goldfish. Suggestions, please, on type of goldfish substrate and plants. I would say inert gravel would be fine, unless you needed to buffer it up with like crushed coral or something like that. And for plants, I would use Anubias, because it's a big, thick leaf. Or Java Fern, with Anubias being my first choice. Let's see. Gator Tex Gaming's asking certain dense plants. Java Moss, ferns. I have sand. I use Phoenix Planet Plus Light. The fish themselves don't care. I mean, I can list dense plants, like you could do Rotala indica. You could do Pogostemma stellatus octopus. You could do different Ludowigias. You could do a very dense growing of Vallisneria. Java moss works. Guppy grass, which is Guadalupensis nagus, works. I would say they don't really care so much as there's lots of cover in there. In fact, they don't even care that it's live plants. You can use Easter grass, you know, like the things they put in Easter baskets. Even that works. Yarn works. So yeah, I would say pick plants you like and that you'll think you'll be able to grow, and you should do okay. What kind of plants are in my goldfish tank? I have Anubiases, Java ferns, Vallisneria, and the kind of the biggest one in there is a crinum, which a crinum is a plant that you'd get in a grab, like the assorted boxes, because I can never keep enough in stock for my store. And so there's a chance I go, oh man, I just got these in, let me throw one of these and make someone's day. That would be in that plant assortment box, whereas I'll never put them on the website because, you know, I might sell 30 in a week, except they only ship me like 5 to 10 if I'm lucky. So, yeah. And I will say, you know, for 8 plants for $50, it's my goal that you would be super stoked to get that. Like, every time you order, it'd be way better value, but I get to choose. You know, that's the only difference. And I myself, you know, it's kind of like asking, you know, the owner of a restaurant, like, what's your best dish? And then usually it's pretty good. So, let's see. What would a cool fish for a centerpiece of a 20-gallon? Now, I don't know if there's a community tank or something like that, but, you know, we get asked this question a lot, and typically I find, like, sunset honey gouramis are pretty good. A ram, like a German blue ram or Bolivian ram's pretty good. Sometimes people just go, I just want color, I don't want any fighting. Sometimes I go, well, just get, like, one male platy. I'm trying to think of something, like, more unique and rare, maybe. Some of the gobies are pretty cool. Yeah, like the lipstick gobies and the cobalt gobies. Yeah. Jay Helfrich asked, do I sell moss online? Trying to make an order, but I don't see any. I don't. And that's the problem with that is I can buy it commercially, but it's all been grown out of water and it crashes horribly hard. So if I sold you this much moss, within 2 weeks you're going to go, I got about this much left, all the rest turn brown, and now it'll come back. And most people are going to go, well, that's, you know, I got bamboozled. I didn't get my money's worth. So I don't. So right now we buy moss off customers, and like at the moment, I have a ton of Christmas moss. That being said, 2 days from now I could be completely out, because once people hear that we have Christmas moss, they come in and they buy it all. But that is something you can email me personally and ask and go, hey, I really want to find some of this. Do you have any? And then I would say, like, oh yeah, I think off the top of my head, I think it's like $8.99 a portion for Java moss. Maybe it's $7.99, I don't know. I have to look in my store. And then like Christmas moss is $9.99, and we could make it happen, but I don't have it online because it would just sell out instantly. So, let's see. Can I set up a 29-gallon tank so that I have a repopulating community of cherry shrimp while cohabitating with an electric blue ram? I want her to have access to fresh food in addition to flake and pellets. Maybe. If you have a really big colony of shrimp, you know, and you got hundreds and hundreds, and then you add that electric blue ram from like a fry size, maybe. Otherwise, in my experience, rams will just hunt them, not even to eat them. Like, even if you keep them well fed, they're like, I'm just going to kill it because it's moving. So the answer is maybe. Let's see here. Ginger says, so my convicts had babies. What should I do? Most likely do nothing except for feed them well. So, like, feed them, like, maybe Hikari First Bites, or, you know, like I'm feeding mine my little blend of food in this thing that I saw on both those are on my website. But crushed flake food works well. You know, they're really easy to raise compared to other fish, and so you shouldn't stress that much about it. Renan asks, how much do my Asagi koi cost? The only Asagis that I have in my store are imported from Japan, Sakai Fish Farm, and they start at $49.99. Let's see. Tips on culturing bloodworms or blackworms and where to get them. The best thing is going to be ordering them up from like California Blackworms, which is the farm. Culturing them is pretty difficult. I maintain that breeding anything else on the planet and then selling that and then buying worms is more efficient than actually making worms. But if you were going to do it, you've got several challenges ahead of you. One is keeping the water very well oxygenated. The second one is keeping them cooler, because the colder they are, the less oxygen they require. Third is actually filtering them. Worms tend to get into everything, so you can't just use a sponge filter. You can't use a power head to pump water to a different tank because that's not going to work because it's going to grind up all your worms. And I would say most people haven't really figured it out yet, and that's why everyone still has to buy them, even me. Like, I've definitely thought about ways like, how can I make this work? But I think the way to do it, which is totally impractical, would be, let's say you've got a 100-gallon vat of live blackworms, and then you have like 500 gallons of water set up in a different tank. And what you do is you get that to turn green, or you feed it spirulina or something like that. So you get that water really full of nutrients. Then you slowly pump that water into the blackworms at a rate of like a gallon every couple of hours. And that water overflows out of the system entirely, like let's say into your garden. I think that could do it. That being said, most people are going, well, 600 gallons of water just to start making some blackworms? Yeah, that's the problem, is it takes a lot to pull it off. And then, you know, the numbers I've researched say that the doubling time on blackworms is 6 months. And so if you have a pound of blackworms, to have 2 pounds of blackworms, it takes half a year. So then that's why you got to have such a big thing, is like, well, I might need, you know, a pound a month. So now you got to have about 12 pounds at least, you know, or I guess you'd have to have 6 pounds at least in some kind of container where you can get rid of the waste fast enough they don't die to be able to harvest enough to feed your fish. Gary Pearson asked, do I use saltwater dips? I do not use any dips like that, no. John Norwegian, I know you're not in saltwater, but do you know any other species that will pair well with your clown trigger? I'm not the guy to ask for that. Yeah, because I'd just be talking out my butt. Yeah, what I would do is I would just do research online and, you know, make an educated decision, you know, like I would anything, you know. Don't walk into the store and go, what can I keep with this? Because they're going, okay, what do I have in my store that I can sell you? Whereas if you start on the internet, you can go, okay, what's the best fish? Okay, now I just have to find the store that sells it. Let's see. Yellow lab would be a good centerpiece fish in a 20-gallon. I suppose if you're only keeping one yellow lab, yeah. Chris Day, do you think RO water helps with diatoms? I helped with conflicting info. It does in a roundabout way, because when you strip water of all nutrients, it technically doesn't have nutrients to feed diatoms, right? That being said, the diatoms can feed on almost anything. So the minute you feed your fish, now you're feeding the diatoms again. So in my opinion, while yes, in a vacuum that technically helps, in practice, not very much. Renan asked if I have any butterfly asagi koi. Nope. Most times it's very difficult to find any known koi types in butterfly because the Japanese don't consider butterfly koi to actually be koi. And so you could pay lots of money. Like on my, you know, bucket list is Doitsu Shiro Itsuri butterfly, which I've never seen 2 of those traits together yet, and I'm wanting 3 of them. So in person, I mean, I know like it's reasonable that I could find Doitsu Shiro Itsuri, which is what, Kama Manasuri, something like that. But you know, to find it in longfin form is a needle in a haystack, and that's why I know if I ever see it, I would buy it. Aquariums by M&G. Any experience with black nasties? I've heard they're susceptible to bloat. True? Question mark. Never had bloat issues outside of ACs. I haven't ever kept them personally, but in my opinion, bloat is never species specific. So what I mean by that is, like, when people say, oh, I really had that problem with African cichlids, or I really had that problem with goldfish, the problem is not the goldfish or the African cichlids or the black nasties. It's the food we're feeding to them. Most times, it's not the right diet or care conditions that are causing that. Because, like, in the wild, black nasties don't just sit there and get bloated all day long. It's how we're caring for them that's causing it. And so you might say that, so for instance, like with goldfish, the reason goldfish get bloat so often is because more often than not, They're not kept in appropriately sized aquariums with appropriate water parameters. And on top of that, most goldfish food, and I'd say 90% of it, is very low quality because the goldfish customer, over the swath of millions of people, is a very cheap customer. They're driven by price. And yes, for every fanatic of goldfish like me that loves goldfish, there's literally probably 50,000 people with a goldfish in a bowl that want to spend $1.26 on goldfish flakes from Wardley. And so that is what ends up causing the bloat that we see time and time and time again on internet and Facebook and things like that. Is, rarely do people kind of go, oh, look how well my fish is doing on a day-to-day basis. They come to the internet and things like that for help when their fish isn't doing well. And I think that, part of it goes down to a very basic level of showing a 5-gallon kit tank, and by that I might mean like a Fluval tank or an Aquatop tank or whatever brand, and it's got a goldfish on it, a fancy little goldfish that can never live in that 5-gallon. So we're already setting people up for failure. And part of that also is in with, by convincing that customer to spend $50 on a tank and put a goldfish in it, it's really hard to convince them, like, well, really, we should be feeding high-quality food. They should be eating $10 in food a week at least. And then on top of that, they should really be in 30 to 50 gallons each. So it's really hard to undo the damage once, and I run into that all the time at my store where people go, well, this store said I could do it. The box shows the fish I want to put in it. And you're going, yeah, just because it says that. It's kind of like if you see a supermodel eating McDonald's, somehow we know that supermodel doesn't eat McDonald's every day and look like that. That's just unlikely. But when we see it in the fish world, we go, well, the box says, the commercial shows it, and we take it at face value. And that's a lot of the problem we run into with bloat scenarios, which is a tangent on those black nasties because I've never kept them personally. David says, I just got a 4-foot Aqueon LED bar for $30. Did I get a great price? I feel like it's pretty good. Yeah, a 4-foot LED light for $30. It's hard to go wrong with that. You paid less than $10 a foot. That being said, it's what are you trying to do? If your ultimate goal was a super highlight planet tank, it's probably $30 wasted because that's not going to help you get there. Let's see. Koi Lover says, what are good tank mates for blood parrots, gold severums, and tinfoil barbs? Let's see here. Waru cichlids would be good. Oscars. You could also take it a different way and go towards like bigger gouramis, like snakeskin gouramis. You could take it another way and go like kissing gouramis. You could do things like leperinus. You could do oddballs like eels and knife fish. You could also upgrade and go much bigger fish. Like let's say this tank's a 300 gallon without me knowing, and you could do like an arowana, and you could do things like that. But the fish you have basically are all pretty moderately tempered, and so you have a lot of options. You could do a big clown loach tank with them, so there's lots of things to play with. Steven says, trying to carpet DHG, which is dwarf hairgrass, 75 gallon of fluorite, current Satellite Pro Plus, daily dose of Excel, planted in a grid, but haven't seen any runners. It's been a month. Did you add anything to that fluoride? The fluoride in itself really isn't enough nutrients to get that dwarf hairgrass growing. You could try putting some root tabs in there, and once that kind of dissolves in and adds to that fluoride, it'd start delivering more nutrients to the dwarf hairgrass. But fluorite typically is more high in iron, and it's got a high cation factor, but for it being fertilizer in and in itself, not that good at that. Tanner asks, what do shrimp eat? Shrimp are microfauna feeders, so they tend to eat things like bacteria, microscopic algae, microscopic funguses. They'd even eat tiny crustaceans like cyclops and things like that, but all really very small things on a not molecular level, but organism level. They'll also eat prepared foods and stuff as well, they just don't do as well with it. Gavin's Aquarium says, fish rubbing up against plants after water change. Could it be because of high TDS? I used an adequate amount of dechlorination. Uh, sure, it could be from high TDS. It could also be from oversaturation of oxygen. If they had any bubbles on their skin, they could be trying to rub it off. Could be a dramatic pH change. Let's say your pH was 6.8 and the tap water coming in 7.2. That new water coming in is going to cause their skin to feel different. It's going to feel itchy to them, kind of like a sunburn does to us. So there's a lot of things that could cause that, and it's up to us to start figuring out what's causing it. Jose asks, which of your plant packages is best for 55-gallon with a Phoenix Fudre Planted Plus, a Phoenix Stingray, and a Monster Ray Light? I would say with that one, I would go with the medium light. Now, that being said, if you're not well-versed in plants yet, start with low-light plants because they're going to be easier. But that tank you listed right there, in my opinion, would be a high-light tank using the 3 fixtures like that. So you could do any of the plant packages if you already have a good, solid foundation for plants. Like, let's say you're already really good at fertilizing and general, anti-algae measures and stuff. Go ahead and start playing with, kind of medium light plants and things like that. If you're new to it, start with low plants just because they're going to grow slower and give you more time to react and counteract problems. And Minerva says, easiest way to make water harder with a neutral pH. The easiest way, go onto my website and buy Wonder Shells. They're basically tons of calcium and a few other minerals, but it doesn't affect the pH. So that would be my solution there. Josh's Aquatics asks, is the adhesive on pop bottles safe for fish? I don't know. And the reason I ask that, or I say that, is I use them in aquariums and I've never had a problem, but let's say you had 5 pop bottles in a 5-gallon aquarium, it's just maxed out in there, and then didn't do a water change for 6 months, maybe enough stuff leaches in there that's toxic. But that being said, I would never use that many in there. I would do way more water changes than that. So, I don't know that I'm the guy that could test how much does it take, So I've never run into a problem, though, in any scenario I've used it in. And Minerva asks, how long does it take new fish to settle into a tank? I would say minimum couple of days, maximum 6 months. It can take a long time for things like datnoids and stuff like that to really settle in. Kyle Harold asks, what's a good minnow species for a 30-gallon tank? I love longfin white clouds. I also think you'd really enjoy a big group of celestial pearl danios. I think gold white clouds, they don't have to be longfin. I think they're super underrated. For the price they are a really nice fish. Let's see here. Andrew Chan, can I need Mabuna cichlids in a 20 long? My guess is that was meant to say breed instead of need. Can it be done? Can it be done? Yes, I've done it. Can you do it? I have no idea. Can I recommend it? I don't recommend it for sure. I mean, that's making life hard. Let's see. Scolopendra Exotics asks, have I ever had a red-tailed catfish? Not in my personal care. Brought them in for people at the store and had them at the store before. Not the store I own now, but stores I've worked at. But I don't see the appeal of the red-tailed cat just because they're a problem 100% of the time. They're always... I watch, for every 500 of them you sell, there's 510 of them that don't have a home. There's already so many that don't have a home that I don't want to help bring more into the world, really. Any tips for crayfish? Lots and lots of cover. Lots of pieces of PVC pipe that are big enough for them to get into and long enough for them to get into, and just cover the bottom of your tank in that. Let's see here. Lang's planted tanks. I have a 40 breeder tank with South American cichlids. I'm using a hang-on back filter and a sponge filter as a secondary filter. How often should I clean the sponge filter? I would say about once a month. I mean, purely depending on load, of course, but on average once a month. Kevin Walden's listening to Livestream and protecting Azeroth. That's, for people that don't know, that's in WoW. I think the new expansion came out, right? I think that happened. I don't know. I decided not to play video games anymore so that I can focus on, my career, so to speak. There's only so much enjoyment you can get out of, PvP and beating down other nerds on the internet. So now I focus on trying to help other people. Let's see here. Cassandra Woolever asks, in my experience, what colors are dominant/recessive in guppies, and do any predisposed resulting fry to disorders, linked genes, weak genes, etc.? In my opinion, the only ones I've really seen have problems, most of the albino strains are just straight up weaker. Not in the sense of like, oh man, there's more kinked backs or anything like that. Like just in general, I find the albino strains to be much weaker and they're slower to feed. I don't know if that's part of their, poorer vision or something like that, but most other ones I haven't really seen problems with. Oh, I just skipped a bunch here on accident. Darn it. Ask again, I suppose. Paul Graham, please advise quantities of Rift salt and Tang buffer to add. Doing 350-liter water changes weekly, 50%. My tap is H2O. pH is 7.6. GH of 5. KH of 5. Tanks with crushed coral shell, white sand, limestone. Advise for Tang and Malawi, pH 8.3. My advice would be don't chase the pH. It's not going to make an ounce of difference to your fish. Well, that's not true. It'll make a huge difference to your fish, and the fact that you won't be very good at dialing it in, and your life will be much worse for it. So I've bred every Malawi and Tanganyika cichlid I've ever put my hands on. I've bred, and I've done it at 7.0 pH. So yeah, I wouldn't chase it. If you want to add some, go ahead, but I can't advise a perfect quantity. And when you're changing water that frequently, you're going to make a mistake that kills your fish. That's what's going to happen. And it might not be tomorrow, might not be in 2 years, might be 5 years down the road. You'll accidentally put too much buffer in or something like that, and there it goes. Carlos, how is it that fish can go so long without food? I don't know how it actually happens. I just know they can, because a lot of fish are just they just don't get to eat that often in the wild. And things like Mabuna or mouth-brooding cichlids, which not just Mabuna, there's lots of mouth-brooders, bettas and stuff like that. But they're used to holding fish for 2 or 3 weeks in their mouth and not eating at all. So, yeah. Tyler asked, tips for breeding German blue rams or half-beaks. Well, German blue rams, breed them in a colony, at least 6, keep it hot, and they like to lay on flat surfaces. Sometimes people use a what do they call it? I'm thinking of the clay pot saucer, flip that upside down, or a little flat stone. And half-beaks, you need lots of floating cover, and you got to check on that tank all the time because they eat all their fry, and that's what keeps them harder to find. Ozzy asks, I have a 90-gallon tank, and I want to make it geos. What plants can I have with them? The easiest thing for you is going to be use all epiphyte plants. So Java ferns, Anubiases, Bulbituses. Make it so that all the plants are attached to wood and rock. You can also make let's say you took a pot, like a terracotta pot, and filled it with Valsinaria, and then put stones so they can't dig in it. That would work as well. Let's see here. Turtle Buff asks, how do I take care of balloon mollies? What do they need? Mostly hard water. They like it a little warmer, 81, 82 degrees, lots of food, and not being outcompeted by other fish in the tank. Let's see here. Michael Tess says, I have a betta and a 5-gallon. I want to put my 55-gallon community with Tetras Apistos. Would it do well? I can't tell you if it would do well. I can tell you that we have a betta that it's in a 33-gallon long, so same footprint as a 55, but shorter. And we have Apistogramma agazizii fire reds breeding pair in there. We have ember tetras. We have all kinds of stuff. It mostly depends on the personality of your Apistos, the type of tetras. Like if you had Serpe tetras, they might chase long fins all day long. And then also the temperament of your betta. Your betta could be real ornery too. What I tell people when they want to do stuff like that is well, try it when you've got a day or two off in a row. That morning, try it out. If it doesn't work, move them back to the 5-gallon. Always have a plan B. But if it does work, great. You solve one of your problems. Let's see here. Gator Tracks Gaming. If by any chance my guppies did breed and have fry, should I overfeed the adults should I overfeed the adults, underfeed them, or feed them normally? I would say just feed them normally. Yeah, overfeeding, you could get, water parameter problems. Underfeeding, that might cause them to prey on their fry more. So, yeah. Alec Harvey says, I want to breed emperor tetras. How do I do it? Most people do it by just having tons of plants in their aquarium and then only emperor tetras. And eventually, if you're feeding small foods, like let's say live baby brine and things like that to your tank every day, eventually you'll just see some start growing up, assuming you have males and females that are adults. Tanner Jones says, what's a good place to buy shrimp? If you can't get them at a local store already, I would probably go to Rachel O'Leary, which would be invertsbymajinx.com. But I would use Rachel O'Leary, and I would buy shrimp from her if I was ordering online at this point. In a pinch, you could do Aquabid, but you never know the reputation, how well they're going to ship, things like that. So, Vaughn says, second attempt, what size should 10 Cory cats be before adding to a 55-gallon mixed cichlid tank, average 2.5 to 3 inches? I would say they should be at least 2.5 to 3 inches. Without knowing what type of cichlids, that could be a bloodbath, but in general, the bigger the better. And the reason why, it's not that I'm so much worried that those cichlids, without knowing what they are going to beat down those Cories. It's that, let's say we know cichlids tend to be very good eaters, and if they eat 90% of the food, we're going to end up stunting the Cory cats, and they're going to be more prone to disease while they're trying to grow. So if we can do all that growing outside that tank and get them super healthy, then put them in there, we won't run the risk of stunting them. So, yeah. Let's see here. AMA too much. What's the largest amount of Chef Boyardee products I've consumed in one sitting? I would say a can of, ravioli. One. I'm not sure if you paid me, I'd really eat Chef Boyardee. I'd have to be really hungry. This is low quality crap, honestly. But good try at being funny though. That was a good attempt. Let's see here. When you're putting minerals in a tank, invest in good TDS meters goes a long way. It can definitely help, Petroman, for sure. It doesn't necessarily tell you what minerals are in the water, but it can definitely help you dial in how much you've added to water if you have a baseline point. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Ethan says, hi, Cory. I was recently told that a beta and neon tetras are not temperature compatible, but everything I read says the temp ranges overlap. I would agree. Betas love to be somewhere between 78 and 82, and neon tetras love to be somewhere between probably 73 to 80-ish. So, in my opinion, you can overlap those temperatures, yes. Let's see here. Wow, we got 264 people watching. That's insane. No wonder it's kind of scrolling faster than normal and I'm falling behind. Probably normal. I'm always behind at a normal rate. Chris Day asked, have I ever had difficulty keeping ammonia? Where'd ammonia come from? Sorry. Rummy nose tetras in hard water or high pH. I've heard that they can develop health problems for long-term exposure. I've never needed to do that, Chris, so I don't have long-term results for you. The person you want to talk to is like a fish farm in Florida and stuff like that. They got crazy hard water, and lots of people keep them there, but I don't know, and I don't want to speak to it going, oh, yeah, it's totally blah, 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 when I have no idea. So, yeah, I feel like I'd have to keep it to know. Adam Till says he's read of necropsies with neons from hard water that have kidney calcium deposits. Interesting. I wonder if in that study, like it explains why they develop a calcium deposit, whereas let's say a hard water fish wouldn't. Like, what's the process in that fish that causes the problem? Matthew asks, any inverts that are easy to care for and non-aggressive for a 20-gallon long? I would say snails, and it doesn't have to be just generic snails. It could be like Tylonesian rabbit snails, shrimp, especially like a mono shrimp would be very easy. Yeah, I would go with those. Tannic Sambo says, I think he's talking to someone else, but hey, neon tetras, but my tetras barely swim up to the food, so I just hope they get enough to eat. It could be a sign that your food is spoiled, by the way. Most people don't realize this, but food goes bad fairly quickly when it's exposed to air every day, and a lot of times it's a humid air, because it's by your fish tank. And so if I take, I only have this empty bag of food, but every day that I open this bag, take a little bit of food out and feed my tank, I am exposing new air to the food in there, and air degrades the quality of the food and breaks down minerals and things like that. So, like, part of what I like to do is take some food out, put it in my auto feeder, keep this closed up, get the air out as much as I can, and keep this fresh. Now, it'd be one step better if I kept it in the fridge also, but in general, you should shoot to use your foods up within a month of opening them. Think of them, treat your fish food like people food, and your fish will do way better for it. I probably just skipped a bunch, but going to continue on anyway. Juan Gudino says, will my guppies breed for sure? 2 males and 2 females. Nothing's for sure, but I would say there's a high probability they're already breeding and the females are already pregnant. Now, whether you'll be able to raise fry, that'll be on you. Gatorex Gaming, do bettas eat snails and their eggs? They might kill snails. They're not known to be real big snail egg eaters, though. Gary Pearson, bloodworms are blackworms to kick off Africans to breed. It's also the easiest way to bloat them and kill your Africans, too. So it's a very fine line to ride there. Let's see. Paul asks, really green question, when feeding, do you turn off your pumps and filters? I personally do not. And most of it's my fear out of, all it takes is once to forget to turn them back on to really do some damage. And then also, prolonged periods of time, depending on the type of filter, can cause bacteria to die. Now, long term, if you were to do it consistently every day, the bacteria would actually just recolonize somewhere else in your system. But there are fish rooms and stuff where they do turn off, let's say, like the air and stuff when they feed. And I tried doing it. I set up my air pumps at the store on a remote control so I could turn it off and feed. And what it does is it trains the fish so when the air goes off, they know it's time to eat. So that's useful. But it actually made it a lot harder to feed fish because flake food that normally would move around just stays on the top and does nothing. And so like the tetras down below didn't really want to go eat it. So it changed the way I feed. And eventually I decided it wasn't a good thing, so I didn't keep doing it. But you could do it, but I feel like everyone always messes up at some point. Like, oh yeah, 4 months into the tank, I forgot once and killed this fish. Anne Minerva says, how to calculate how much crushed coral to use for hard water? I would say go slow and steady. I personally, like in our water, which is very, very soft, it's almost RO water, and it's 6.8 pH, we use 1 pound per 10 gallons of water sprinkled throughout the gravel. Now, if you put that in a filter, you'll use a different amount. So a lot of experimenting there. I'd say start with a little bit and realize that it takes at least 10 days to start seeing an effect. And really, you should be monitoring it on a monthly basis to see what the highs you're hitting and the lows you're hitting when you change water. Also, the more often you change water, the harder it'll be to keep the pH higher. It needs time to react. Mike Yak says, so I added some neons and should have medicated them first. Went from 26 to about 8 with no changes in the water parameters in about 3 days. Three of the last eight fast breathing at the bottom. Are they goners? They sound like goners, but without knowing what's doing it, it's hard to say. But it sounds like something's going through those fish and just tearing right through them. And so, yeah, I would say it's unlikely that they're going to survive unless you intervene somehow. Let's see. Ruby Sean says, "Hey, hi Corey. What food would you give goldfish?" So every goldfish except for this tank, because I've got an overflow on there, and trust me, I'm like this close to really wanting to set up an entirely different tank here because of that. Still with goldfish, but every other goldfish I feed my omnivore pellet mix. It's got brine shrimp, krill, fish meal, wheat germ, lots of bad things too, like every pellet does. But my omnivore mix does so well for goldfish that I sell on my website. That's what I use. That being said, I also use fresh duckweed that I grow. I also use frozen brine shrimp. For these goldfish, I'm also using some gramaris that's frozen. But there's lots of foods you can feed. In fact, we did a whole hour-long episode on how to feed goldfish. Search that up on my channel. Just type in goldfish, and I'm sure it'll pop up. And you can watch that, and then you can make an educated decision on what you want to feed your goldfish. But if you're asking what I feed, that's what I feed. Let's see here. Renan asks, should I grow Java Fern, Wendelov, or Trident in a 10-gallon tank with one male betta and a bit under a dozen Harlequin rasboras and cherry shrimp and mystery snails? I think it's a personal preference. I think the Wendelov will add a lot more texture to your tank, where the Trident, you really only see the Trident in bigger tanks because the leaves get so long. You don't really see the Trident shape. So I personally would recommend Wendelov, but do what you like. Let's see. Chewy Bros says, my guppies are not breeding in my 36-gallon. 2 males, 2 females. Any tips? I've even fed them live brine shrimp. Is there anything else in the tank? Because they're probably just eating the babies. And then on top of that, do you have a sponge on the intake of that? If you don't, your filter's eating the babies. It's very rare that when you have guppies that they're not producing babies. You might not see the babies, but almost always they are making them. Tanik Sambo says, hi Corey, I think my female betta is pregnant. What happens to a female betta if her eggs never get fertilized? What the body is supposed to do is reabsorb them, and then it'll make eggs again. That's just a re-going cycle. What happens a lot of times, unfortunately, though, because the bettas we buy are so inbred, they get egg impacted and they die from a complication long term. That's why I personally don't like to sell and don't keep many female bettas, because I don't like them getting kind of engorged with eggs and having some problems. Tyler asks if I ever kept or worked with any of the Malawi or Tanganyikan crabs or shrimp. Never the shrimp, but I have played with a few of the crabs. I can't remember the species. Wait, crabs? No, some of the... yeah, it was one of the crabs, and then a crayfish, too, I believe. I can't remember the species off the top of my head, though. That was really early in my fish-keeping career, and so I do know because I was like, wow, these are super rare, and I looked them up at the time, but I couldn't name off the top of my head now. Let's see. Carlos says, my giant hairgrass and bacopa came with these little snails. Are they a pleasant value added or a pest? I personally like snails because they help me clean all my parts of the tank that I don't clean, in the crevices of wood and rock and things like that. And people that have problems with lots of snails typically are running tanks that encourage that. So they tend to be very high levels of detritus and things like that, but I find them to be beneficial personally. Block 5178 says, I had some guppy deaths and noticed they died behind the same rock in a triangular cave. Can guppies get stuck like that? And did they likely just both end up there after getting sick? They could get stuck. Guppies aren't known to, but most likely that's one of the weakest points of current in your tank. So like if a fish died over here and the current eventually just carries them and they land there, if that's the weakest point, that would continue to do that most likely. What's my take on snakeheads? I think they're amazing, but they're illegal in Washington. That being said, I feel like I always see the coolest snakehead pictures online where they got a mouthful of fry and man, some of those red chaunas are amazing. So, Alphabet says, what would do? I'm stuck. I'm guessing is what they're trying to say. What I want, I'm setting up 12 foot by 3 by 3 I love monster fish and playing a community tank. I already have many tanks with both of them. Which one would you do and what stock? 12 by 3 by 3. I would probably do larger fish. No, I'd probably just do... I would set up like another Mabu puffer tank or something, even though 3 foot's not quite enough. I would do something that allowed me to have plants, but also could be bigger fish. Like maybe, like in my store, I just got some clouded archer fish and things like that. I would do things that get big, but don't terrorize the plants. That's what I would do. Let's see here. Playing catch up here. My bad. Thomas Reed. Hi, Corey. I have a school of roseline sharks. Every 2 to 3 months, I lose some due to swollen abdomens and localized bleeding. I quarantine, but still no luck with them. I would say this probably needs a follow-up question. You can email me if you need to. But what other fish are in there? Is there any chance you've got like a ramming fish, so to speak? So like a... what am I trying to say? Like a leperinus? Something that's going to ram the fish. That can cause internal bleeding. Because if you're already quarantining, I'm assuming you're already treating for normal internal parasites and things like that. So I would look into that, the stocking of what's in the fish. And then obviously food and quality of food and freshness of food can all play into that as well. But yeah. Quindon says, second attempt, what leaved green plant would be recommended for a back middle in a tank of about 15 inches height with medium lighting? Sorry for the answer this, I missed response. So a leaved green plant, any stemmed plant? I mean, the question's wide open there. So, you know, any stemmed plant, you're going to be able to keep it whatever height you want because you're going to trim it that way. Think of it like a hedge. With medium light, I mean, most stem plants are going to thrive there anyway. So you could do something like the octopus plant that's on my website. You could do Ludowigias. You could do Limnophilia renophila. You can do... Wait, Limnophilia... No, Limnophilia rotundifolia, not renophila, sorry. You could track down some rarer things, like maybe Nymphoides species Taiwan, things like that. But really, you got to just go with what you like the look of. And with medium light, there's so many options there, really. Let's see. No choice for the win. Can you keep one male betta with endlers? It can be done. It depends on the betta mostly. Like, I have it done at the store right now, but, you know, I could put a different betta in there and he could go, you know, attack him. That wouldn't be good. Let's see here. When cleaning deep sand, wrote gravel before, and you find black patches, what is that? Some sort of oxidation? You know, I'm not sure, like, because I have no way to actually test to know what it is. So, I don't know what it is. That's the answer. And I think you Google online, but I don't know you're going to find the answer there either. And I think whatever I say next would be me making it up. So, I don't want to do that. Let's see here. What canister filter do I recommend for a 75-gallon African cichlid tank? I feel like I would go with an FX4 currently. Yeah, an FX6 would be fine too, but I feel like it doesn't need the extra filtration. And here's this. I'd rather have an FX4 and an AquaClear 110 hang-on back than I would an FX6 for sure. So I would do that combo, make my life easy. Let's see here. Nathan Hammond asks, hey Corey, any tips to stop my African cichlids from pulling up my valves? They don't eat it, just pull it up. If you're having problems with that, put a bunch of rocks. So like, let's say you've got your Vallisneria growing out, put stones that'll help hold it. You can also put like a lead weight around it to help give it some weight. The other thing you can do, like let's say you've just got really stubborn Africans, grow the Vallisneria like in a pot full of gravel or something, like a terracotta pot in a different tank. when it's really rooted well and really thick in there, then move it in there, and they won't be able to pull it out probably. So those are some tips. Let's see here. Ricky J asks, "Hi Corey, how are the koi? What are my thoughts on domestic koi? Do you think there is a market for them?" I don't really feel like there's a market for them, Ricky, only because domestic koi are so looked down upon that means they're cheap. And if they're cheap, places like Singapore and stuff like that are going to be able to produce them usually cheaper than someone in America can. And so I don't think they're viably sustainable until you can convince the public of who you are. So if all of a sudden, if I was like, oh, Ricky J, he makes the best line of this koi, then that's marketable. You yourself are marketable, but your fish won't be until you yourself are, if that makes any sense. Because without a name to go along with it, you're just another guy that's making mutts, so to speak, to anyone that's a koi snob. Not that, there's plenty of good koi and stuff that are made all around the world, whether it's Israel, Russia, Hawaii, Japan, China. But, the people that are mass buying fish, it's either someone that wants just cheap price or they want high quality. And the high quality, they're going to invest their money in Japanese koi. It's Gone says, could bichers go with African cichlids? Yes, they can. Depends on, obviously, the cichlid and the type of bicher. But I've done it. It's kind of awesome. Cichlid Aquariums, what's my favorite community tank bottom dweller? Corridoras. And not just because my name is Corey, but because they're awesome. And then who doesn't love it when a Corridora, blinks at you? It's creepy and awesome at the same time. Like, you just watch them. They're not even blinking. They're just moving their eye, but it looks like they're blinking, I swear. Let's see. TJ Tucker says, hey, Corey, I'm wondering why you leave the uplift tubes off my sponge filters, and what are the benefits? The benefits are it speeds up how fast I can clean the sponge because I don't have to, work around that part. 2, at the store, I don't have to answer the question of, is that plecostomus stuck inside that tube 50 times a day at the store? And otherwise, they tend to build a lot of algae because they're, right under the light a lot of times. And so they look a little unsightly, but you do get better flow if you have the tube on. Let's see. Kevin Walden asks if I've ever been to Loop Diesel's channel or website, and what do I think of it? I have. I don't know what to think of it yet. He's got an insane setup. I usually leave the videos going, what has this guy done to have a warehouse just to play and build this stuff all the time? And with this, and I'm not criticizing, but I'm with this much capacity, why is he always sold out of anything I'm interested in? So I haven't bought anything from it. I've never met the guy, but I do watch his videos because I find them interesting, yeah. Let's see here. Josh Aquatic says, are fire mouse all that mean? I wouldn't say they're any more mean than a convict is. Adam Till says, are zebra endlers a guppy cross? My Google foo is failing me. I don't know. I don't think they are. I think they're an endler cross, but I don't think they're a guppy cross because they never get the enlarged body like a tiger endler would, at least from everything I've ever seen of keeping them and breeding them. Joel asks, hey, Corey, I saw my albino Oscar with its scales all beat up and its stomach was bloated and sluggish on the bottom. It died the next day. What do I think caused it? If you saw no signs beforehand, probably some kind of aggression issue. Without being able to ask more questions, I could be totally wrong or totally right. But a lot of times, big cichlids, they kind of ram the abdomen of another fish to kind of incapacitate it. Long Woo says, Corey, what are your thoughts of the AquaClear media baskets buy in the tank? I'm trying to analyze this. The AquaClear media baskets buy in tank. So that makes it sound like it's a manufacturer. I'm not sure if that's the one, but there's some reef companies and stuff that make custom media baskets for the AquaClears that allow you to put protein skimmers and all that kind of stuff. I think they're cool, but I think they're overpriced. But I'm not quite sure if that's what you're asking me, so I don't want to go into it too in depth and go, oh, I was totally on a tangent on the wrong thing. 209 Control, you have a 90-gallon tank with undergravel filter. Should I get rid of it? If I do take it out, can fish remain in the tank, or should I take the fish out while you do this? Well, if you do take it out, I recommend probably taking the fish out at least temporarily, because that might muck up the water a bunch. That being said, I'm not convinced that an undergravel filter is a bad thing. Now, the internet is getting their pitchforks and their torches ready because they're going, oh, this guy. But I think if you service it well, it can actually be very beneficial to a lot of tanks. That being said, it could also be detrimental if you don't service it enough, or it's set up incorrectly, or, like one of the easiest ways you might be able to, hot rod that undergravel filter is put power heads blowing back through the other way and run it in reverse flow. There's ways you can play with it. But so if you were to ask me, I always got to take it to my store. But if you came in and said, my fish are doing awesome, I have an undergravel filter, and the internet tells me I'm dumb, should I change it? My answer is, don't change it if your fish are doing awesome. Now, if you're having lots of problems and things like that, there might be a case for changing it. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's see here. And Minerva, is it normal for guppies to rest on the bottom at times? Usually only pregnant females. A lot of times they shouldn't be resting on the bottom. Let's see here. Cichlid Aquarius. Corey, what would you put in a half moon 20-gallon tank? I would do guppies. I'm a sucker. Ricky J says, hi, Corey. I've got 225-gallon tempered glass tanks. What is the best way to do an overflow siphon for auto water changes? For auto water changes, you got two options. No, that's not true. You got one option. Here's how I would do it. If I had this scenario and I had to do it this way, which I wouldn't want to, but if I had to do it this way, I would build a PVC overflow. Lots of videos you can look up on how to do that. I would install a check valve at the point at which the overflow goes over the rim. A check valve only allows air to go one way. I would silicone that in. Then I would connect the hose from that to a power head Venturi system. I know it's getting a little in depth, but that's where normally in a power head you can make it suck air in and spray air into the tank. Well, if you hook that up to that check valve, it's going to pull water through that, right? What it's going to do is anytime a bubble gets in there, it's going to suck that bubble out for you and keep it from failing. And that way, you'd have a pretty close to a fail-safe system. Now, I'm not sure there's any system ever out there that's fail-safe, but I think that's about as close as you can get to it. And the reason why is most times those siphons fail when the power goes out. Just a little bit of air builds up in there. Power was out for 4 hours, whatever. And then power comes back on. Well, luckily, when the power head comes back on, it should suck that air back out for you before the next time your auto water change goes. So that's how I would do it. Mike Angel asks, Corey, what kind of canister filters do I sell in the store? I sell the Fluval line, which means all the 105, 205, 305, 405. I have the FX6. I have the FX4. I have Phoenix, the miniature canister filter, the FX360, and then I also have Aquatop filters as well. Let's see here. Michael says, if I made my own guppy strain, what would it look like? Let's see. What would I want to see? I feel like I want it to look like a goldfish. And what that means is, like Home Aquatics has some koi guppies, but I think that it's basically white and red. If you added some black patches on there, it'd be like a show or a Sankei guppy. I think it would look pretty cool. Because right now, most patterns on guppies are always like, it's either metallic, or we have snakeskin pattern, or we have, things like that. Also, I'd want it to be like a round or pintail, not a big delta tail or anything like that. I like smaller tails typically because I like the fish to be nimble and agile. That way I can put it with more things. So that's why I like endlers a lot too. Let's see here. What is a reasonable tank size for 3 tinfoil barbs, 2 paku, and 3 Japanese koi? 1,000 gallons, maybe more. I mean, that might not even be reasonable. I mean, tinfoil barbs, okay, yeah, they're going to get 16 inches. Yeah, it's manageable. Paku, if you're not stunting them, 4 feet. Japanese koi, if you're not stunting them, at least 34 inches, you know? And so, I mean, I guess if, you know, I can't put a gallons to it. I would say 8 to 10 feet long, 5 to 6 feet front to back depth, and then 3 feet tall. That would be the minimum I would probably keep those fish in if I was actually trying to keep them as adults in that. Let's see. What could cause male guppies to rest on the bottom during the day? Probably some kind of stress. So either a fish is harassing them, water parameters aren't good, they have parasites, but yeah. Happy Camper says, will dwarf aquarium lily bulbs grow without fertilizer? Yes, but long term they will die. And it's because that bulb is fertilizer, but once it runs out, it will die. And so the goal is you put fertilizer in so that it replenishes it and always has a reserve. Joseph says, am I ever planning on adding saltwater to my store? Only if I want to go out of business. I would add saltwater. So I never plan on doing that. It's the easiest way to lose money. Let's see. Oh, looks like I gotta ban this guy. This Captain Picard guy. He's getting banned. 1 second here. There we go. Block him. How about an American parrot cichlid with African cichlids? I don't recommend it. I just feel like it's already hard enough to keep. And when I say American parrot cichlid, I'm guessing we're talking about the true parrot cichlid. It's already hard enough to keep them happy and healthy long term. With those Africans, I think it's going to make it harder. Kevin Walden, do fish passively, constantly give off ammonia from osmoregulation and things like breathing, or is the ammonia they produce purely from them eating food and passing it through their system? Well, basically, when a fish goes to the bathroom, if they're going poop, you see that. But that's only about 30% of their waste. 70% of their waste is through that osmoregulation where basically urea is leaving their body into water that has less urea. And that's what causes fish to bloat up in really high nitrates and poor conditions, is when there becomes more waste in the water than's inside the fish, no longer does the urea flow outward. So once, they keep eating and more urea keeps building up in the system, getting more and more toxic, and that's what causes the problem typically. Tommy Tank says, mascara barbs, are they cool? You did a fish room video a couple weeks ago, and he had them. I really liked them. Liked that with the mascara barbs, denture barbs, and rainbows, and would add about 10 clown loaches. Yeah, they're cool. They're pretty laid back. I mean, they're a cool fish for sure. If you like the dention barbs or roseline sharks and stuff, you'll like these. If you like rainbows, you'll like them. They're nice fish. Let's see. Corey, I have a question. I have a pair of blushing angels, and they killed my 5 German blue rams in 2 days. They had multiple spawns, and they're 75 gallon. What can I put in there now? The problem is breeding angels kind of get mama bear syndrome, and they just get really protective. So anything you put in there is you're putting it right back into the gauntlet. It's going to have to do battle, So you might be able to get away with like corridoras and things like that, but realize you're putting stuff into an aggressive situation. Let's see. Scolo Pendra asks, have I ever had an Arapima? I've never had an Arapima. Never even kept one at a store. I've had a chance to get them. It's one of those fish I'm like, well, I don't think most people should have access to them. Mike Angel, how much is the FX4, Corey? I need 2 of them. I think off the top of my head in my store they're $249. Is that right? Yeah, $249. Yeah. David asks, and do I want to keep them as adults? I've had them for about 8 months now. What is that referring to? I can't see it quickly, so I got to give up. Braden asks, Corey, do you know if an angelfish will eat cherry shrimp? They will, or I should say they can, if they're super well fed and there's infinite hiding places, stuff like that, you could pull it off. That being said, they will actively hunt them. Will convict cichlids protect their fry or eat them? Typically what happens is they're going to protect them until they're ready to spawn again. And when they go, okay, we're ready to spawn, they see those fry now as threats to the new spawn. So then they'll eat them. So the trick is to separate them before that happens. That might be 2 weeks, might be 2 months, might be 6 months, might be 2 days. Your pair will dictate that. Like, for instance, I just lost my female. So even though I have a batch of convicts sitting in there, the male killed the female. Usually when that happens is because someone started eating a little bit of the fry, and they both assume it's the other person, so they start killing or attacking each other. And I saw a little bit of beat up fins, and I'm going, they look okay. And the next day it came in and it was dead. So it's one of those like, dang it. I thought that might have been happening, but I didn't act on it fast enough, and so that's purely my fault. Breeding guppies, any tips? My tips would be watch my videos I've done on breeding guppies. You can just go to my channel, type in guppies, pull some things up. The Silly Pancake. Hey, Corey, where do you get your Piscogrammas from? Wholesale, local breeder? I can't seem to find any in my area. Currently, I'm supplied by both those, wholesaler and local breeder, depending on the type. Yeah. Lee says, how easy would you say a Piscogramma cockatoides are to breed? I think they're easier than angelfish. So that hopefully gives you a, I guess a barometer on like how hard it is to do. Let's see. Adam Till says, where did you learn about doing lateral scrapes and gill biopsies? What is it? I'm trying to remember what it's called now. In Oregon, there's basically Dr. Tim Miller Morgan, and he puts on classes and stuff like that when he goes to zoos, and you can pay money to attend these classes, and that's what I was doing. But he also runs, I think the only one I know of, an actual like 2-year degree on ornamental fish, which is unheard of. I desperately want to take it, and I threaten to do it all the time. Like, I'm just going to, go down and stay in Oregon 4 nights a week or something, which would be like a 4-hour drive away to do it, because I just think it'd be amazing to learn stuff like that, because the man is brilliant. He's super smart, and he's got videos on YouTube on how to do all that kind of stuff, so you can watch the videos, but it's a different experience when you're there and you're learning how to put koi under and then scrape them and clip their gills and then analyze it and do all these things. It's really nice when you can do it in person. And like, I'm a guy that wants to know everything, so I'm sure the rest of the class didn't like me very much. There's like, there's 8 of us in the class, right? And we're all around this pond and we're doing stuff. And everyone was being really quiet, so I just kept firing off questions like, well, what about this? What happens when this happens? What happens when this? What happens when this? Because I thought, we're here, we've got this guy with immense knowledge, he travels the world helping people with fish disease and things like that, and he's got a team of people that he works with, and no one's asking questions? The stuff this guy's seen is insane. And so I always kept asking questions that related back to like importing fish and bringing them into my store and things like that, even though the class was centered around koi health and stuff like that. I tried to pertain to like different koi diseases and stuff, but I find it really fascinating when if you ever get the chance to talk to someone that really knows about one specific field in anything, whether it's fish or toy cars or, engines, it doesn't matter what it is. When they really have like made their life's work out of something and you're interested in it, man, I'd pay almost anything to keep having that experience of going, ooh, I can pick his brain about this. Ooh, I had another question. That's the problem is months later you're going, oh man, I know that guy would have the right answer. I just gotta track him down, and like when my first Mabu puffer died, and he was really sick and I couldn't cure him. There's nothing I could do. I kept calling and emailing people like, who knows about puffers, right? And it always came back to Dr. Tim Miller Morgan. The problem was, when my puffer was dying, he was literally on the Amazon River working on Project Piaba, and there's no Facebook, there's no email out there, so he finally got back to communication, and he's like, oh, well, yeah, we could work on it. I'm like, well, at that point it passed away, because he was out there for like 6 weeks straight with no communication. And so, but yeah, I mean, that guy knows lots of stuff when it comes to fish disease. And one of the most important things I learned in these seminars I was taking was that diseases are locale based, And so you might get a disease in Thailand that will never, ever, ever show up in Florida because Thailand has different water parameters and different temperatures, whereas Florida has different water parameters and different water temperatures, and it doesn't lend itself well to that disease thriving. And so it was interesting where all of a sudden, let's say you're importing bettas, and you're like, oh, every time I import from Thailand, I get velvet. You could probably import bettas bred in Florida, and you would never see velvet again because their hard water with higher pH doesn't lend itself well to that, which it was kind of a mind-opening thing of like, wow, I never thought based on the country I ordered from would help dictate what diseases I might even see. So, yeah, that was just one of the cool things that I, kind of learned in addition to gill scraping and or lateral line scraping and gill scraping and biopsies and stuff like that. So, as I'm told now, it's time for it's 6 puppy time.
Sassy time.
Oh, sassy time. Okay. Because I didn't get to make an appearance last week, and so. Oh, there we go. There we go. So now I've got mascots with me. Now I can answer questions for real. And I gave my wife the okay that she's allowed to bring the dogs in if she starts dressing them up. So, like, from now on, when they come in, they have to, like, have a different costume or something to keep it fresh. So she's pretty much as excited as you can get because I just gave the green light to waste money on dog costumes. So I don't know if they can. No, they can't. You'd have to be, like, by my face. That's my wife's thumb. Uh-oh. Anyway, let's see here. What's the best thing to feed cichlid fry? Probably just smaller foods like I've got a micro pellet on the website, but most small things, they're easy to feed, honestly. It depends on I guess it depends on how small, like rams, for instance, you're going to have to use very tiny food. Let's see here. Someday I want to have a tank with an albino Oscar and a normal Oscar. I know that would need to be a large tank to pull it off. What size tank and filtration would I recommend to keep 2 Oscars? I think you would do well in 120. So that's a 4-foot by 2-foot aquarium. That's about the smallest I would recommend to do it, and I think you could do pretty well. So yeah, what happened to Ivan? I can't pronounce the last time, but basically he made a ton of cool videos of underwater habitats. I don't know what happened to him. Probably what happens to most YouTube people is it's lots of work while not paying to do the work. And so they go, oh man, I should go do this for a living instead. What I will say, I'm going to screen share here. I'm going to show you another channel that's super tiny, but it's my man crush, Oliver Lucanis, starting to put out really cool footage of the Amazon. And so let me do a screen share here. You're seeing weird stuff right now. I apologize. Oh, geez, I'm all over the place here with the dog. Let me get to the right screen. And let me pull up. Oh, there, I'm watching myself. Like, that's not going to work. Let me pull up over here. And we'll pull up. I just want to show you guys some of his footage here. Amazon Below Water is the channel name. And he's got, he's done photography for years. Mind-blowingly cool photography. But he's got all these things. He's doing a lot of drone work. So like this is a flight over the Xingu River, and so you can really get a good look into habitats when he goes down closer to some of these, and you can see a lot of the rivers. And I'm just kind of fast forwarding through here, but like here's fish, so now you can start seeing some of the habitats right here, and there's usually you can see how the rock formation and plants are, and so now we're finally underwater. Like here's a geophagus of some sort. There's I think it's the daemon cichlid. And there's, like here, these are some type of banded leprinus and stuff like that. So really cool footage. And, there's only like 278 subscribers for the amount of cool content this guy's making. I've been subscribed for a while because I've been following on Facebook and stuff. I'm his internet stalker. But this guy sees some of the coolest fish ever. So anyway, let me get back to, a normal screen here. But Oliver Canis is a freshwater fish collector. He collects from the Amazon. There's usually long wait lists. There's people willing to spend thousands of dollars per wild-caught discus. They basically all end up in either Japan or Germany for people willing to pay it. He'll collect stingrays and all this stuff. And usually he goes out a few times a year. He's already sold everything. He's got like a shopping list, and he goes and finds those fish and then sells them. If you watch his Facebook and stuff, you'll see fish you've never seen before, stuff he brings back. It all goes into Canada, so everyone that lives in Canada, you got a huge leg up because it's really not fun to try to get those fish into Canada. And a lot of times he just posts like, oh, I have these, and they sell out instantly while I'm trying to go, well, how do I get it? Oh, it's gone. So, yeah, let me switch dogs, and we got, a few minutes left here, so I'll put Sassy down. How about that? Oh, now I got the scaredy dog. All right, so now I got Wincy with her wings. I call them wings because, oh, she's so scared. I'm petting her. Her heart is just racing. So let me pull up some more questions here while I show off the dog. Looks better than me, I'm sure of it. Oh, the screen didn't change? Dang it. All right, hold on. I gotta show this now. The screen didn't change. That's horrible. Oh, I know. I didn't screen share it to you. So now it's changed. Let me go back. Let me replay this video. But it's Amazon below water, and he does things where he shows up above the habitats, and then he's actually down in the habitats here, if I can find. So now we're in the water, and you can see all the detritus buildup, and you've got, over here, you've got geophagus, and then the banded leporinuses and stuff like that. And there's lots of videos on his channel on this kind of stuff. So, and he's putting it out, that was 4 days ago, that one was 4 days ago. He's just shooting tons of footage, and a lot of it's kind of raw and stuff like that, but there's so much cool stuff to see. I don't even know what this video is. It's on stingrays. Oh, some captive stingrays. But yeah, Anyway, I'm going to go back and start answering questions now. So hopefully you guys got to see that one. All right. Hopefully that came up. Let's see. Corey, is there anything I can do for stressed fish, particularly peacock fry? You got to find the stress factor. That's the problem. So whether it's adding live plants might help, maybe it's water change, maybe it's the light is too bright, maybe there's no decorations to hide, that type of thing. So, yeah, trying to think what else here. Any ideas on a price range for a 1,000-gallon tank? Or would it be better to have one made? Well, to have one made is probably going to cost you in the realm of $16,000 or so. So, it depends on how you're going to do it. My poor little dog, so scared, so scared. Yeah, I'm going to hand her off. We got 9 minutes. I got to go to the lightning round here. Let's see. What is the best canister filter for smaller tanks under 55 gallons? Let me hand off Wincy. Woo! All right. I would say probably a Fluval 204 or 304 is probably what I'd go with. Let's see. Have I ever kept Biodoma cupido? Yes, I have. They kind of get a pinkish color when they're, when they're mature. They don't get very large. They're actually a gymnogeophagus, and they're fun little fish. Let's see here. Am I planning on shipping to the UK? You need my products? I wouldn't say I'm planning on. I'm always researching into it and finding a way that maybe I can make it work, but I'm not necessarily, looking to do that. Let's see. 2 asks, what do I think about the $50 eBay canister filter that's 3-stage? I personally wouldn't run it because when your house burns down from it, you won't have any insurance or anything like that. I'm not saying that your house will, but if it did, and you have non-UL rated products in your house, they're just going to blame that. And so for me, while you save money right now, you would not save money long term if you ever had an accident. And long term, water plus electricity, accidents happen. Let's see. Kevin Walden, how does one, like myself, even go about creating their own aquatic fertilizer and fish food like you have? Well, you start contacting manufacturers, and then you start coming up with blends that you like, and you get samples sent out, and you make it so you can afford the minimum quantities. And that's usually where people stop, is they start contacting, and first they're going to want a business license. If you don't have that, they already know you're wasting their time. But let's say you do get to that point, Then, with food, you start going, wait a second, I got to buy $7,000 worth of food just to start? Like, that's dumb. I can't sell that much. And so then they go, yeah. All right, next. Because when you're contacting a mill, typically they're used to running very, very large quantities. So when you go, yeah, I'd like just a ton worth, they're like, just 1 ton. And they're like, that's the minimum, And the problem is you start getting into flake foods or something like that. It's like, yep, still 1 ton minimum. Like, do you want it or don't you? And they don't even really want to work with you because you're going 1 ton. And then Purina, shows up and goes, oh yeah, I need this dog food made. Go ahead and give me 900 tons. So 1 ton is not even worth it to them really. So that's the hardest part, is finding someone that will work with you, even if you know what you want to put in it. Then there's the whole obstacle of like, oh yeah, I want to put all these things in it. Oh, it costs this much to have that made. The public will never pay that. So that's another obstacle you run into. Let's see. In the Go, hi Corey, can you see natural sunlight being part of your planet tank? Yeah, I mean, I really want to set up a greenhouse. Like, so I've got this like dream of like my doors opening, my double doors that open up. If I had that open up into a greenhouse that had more fish in it, because most fish look best under natural sunlight, and plants can do really well also. So I personally would love to keep fish that I just want to look at in a room like that. And then, of course, my tanks would be planted. So yeah, I could totally see that happening. Have I ever kept Waru? I've never kept Waru long term. I really do want to. And if I have to be honest, I fell in love with Warus because of Waru Joey way back in the day. And then I saw some in a store that were full grown, and ooh man, they are sweet. Mario says, Corey, I have an Oscar and a few other cichlids in a 45 gallon. He's pushing 4 inches. How much longer is okay in this 45 gallon? Kind of comes down to water testing. As long as your water's testing okay, you're good. If you're starting to fall behind, look to upgrade. Obviously, if you upgrade faster, it's better. What's the coolest monster fish or fish with monster personality for a 60-gallon aquarium? Let me think of something like really cool. I feel like Exodon Tetras, a school of those is pretty neat. And then it's only a 60. It depends how the 60 is laid out, but maybe a water cow. Although really it should be bigger than that too. What happens when you overfeed goldfish? Not a lot. I mean, normally they can handle it. It's kind of like what happens when you eat Thanksgiving dinner and then you have 3 desserts. You go, oh man, I shouldn't have eaten so much. Why did I do that? But you make it through it. But if you consistently do that every day, you're going to gain a lot of weight, and eventually one of those things is actually going to harm you. And that's what happens most times, is people are way overfeeding their goldfish all the time. And it's just, 1 out of 100 times you're actually going to hurt that fish. And so once in a while, usually not that problematic. 3 minutes left. Uh-oh, we're on a race. What do I feed my guppies, and how do you make sure the fry get enough without overfeeding the tank? I overfeed the tank intentionally, and then I personally feed them this food, which is a fry food in this delivery system that I've kind of made up. It's on the website. You can look at it as small fish food. Let's see here. Guppies in a 10-gallon can totally be done. Can you put your albino bristlenose plecostomus with an autosynclus? Yeah, a lot of people do. Would goldfish choke on snails? Goldfish can choke on anything that fits in their mouth. Largest fish to keep in a 75-gallon tank, in my opinion, would probably be about a 15-inch fish total length. Let's see here. What's the coolest fish for a 20-gallon aquarium? Probably a goldfish, like just a fancy goldfish that you water change 100% every day and love the crap out of it. Do cherry shrimp have the same laxative effect as brine shrimp? They should, yes. I had my goldfish eat brown hair algae. I'm so proud of that. But can it harm them? No, it doesn't harm them. In fact, I'm using goldfish to clean up algae and duckweed and stuff like that for me in my fish room right now. It's super good for them. Are peacock snakeheads legal in Washington? As far as I know, the whole Chana family is not legal in Washington. Let's see. Oh, it looks like Paul's looking for a band. Let me just get to that. Good job, buddy. Let's see. Mud Skipper. Mud Skipper might outgrow a 20, but it'd be really cool on a 60, you're right. Let's see. Does my fertilizer Easy Green increase nitrates in a tank by a lot or very minimal? Well, both those terms are subjective, but I would say a lot. Like in comparison to CChem, way stronger than that. That being said, in a planted tank, they should be consuming a ton. And so you should test your water and make adjustments accordingly. Corey, I would be buying from your awesome store. I have an account. That's so cool. Awesome. Do you think musk turtles are beneficial for a fish tank? No, I don't think they're beneficial for it. Can you do it? Sure, but I wouldn't say it's beneficial. Beneficial to the turtles, probably not to the fish. Kevin asked, do I have an ETA on the shrimp tank series? I don't have an ETA, but I am jonesing for shrimp. Let me tell you what. Like, really, it's probably like get those racks set up that I have going. Then I might work on... I've got 1 or 2 projects I want to work on next. Either some more goldfish stuff or some more shrimp stuff, and I don't know which one's going yet. Something fishy. My pH fluctuates from 8 to 7 at night due to CO2 being on during the times the lights are on. Yeah, so I would off-gas. I would use oxygen while the CO2 is going. That's what I personally would do. And I know the internet says don't do that. Opinion on Hikari First Bites, I think they're just fine, yeah. TR Hades, you're exactly right, that he needs more dissolved oxygen, yep. Goldfish is gulping a lot of times an oxygen issue. An airstone can fix that. Kevin Walden says, are fertilizer nitrates and fish nitrates the same thing? I've heard fertilizer nitrates aren't as harmful. Depends on what it's derived from. I would say they're pretty similar. That being said, I feel like fish waste is actually less harmful because it's natural. Am I going to film a shrimp series? I am. Yes. Just a matter of time. Ooh, it's 7:01. We're calling it. What do I got to remember to do here? I want to know. Send me questions up above for good ideas like shrimp series and stuff like that. Throw a like on this video if you haven't already. Check out all my other content. Yeah, I'll be eating dinner and hanging out at WashingtonFishbox.com. WAFishbox.com is where I hang out. It's my local forum that I own, and I just kind of chat and chime in there from time to time. I'm not super active, but that's where you can find me hanging out. And yeah, let me get to the right screen, and thank you guys for watching and doing all those things. My screens are all messed up now that I took you guys on a little trip to the Amazon with that video. The second time, because the first time I screwed up. But all right, well, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next Sunday. And don't forget, the sale only goes for another, 5 hours? And so the stuff that's on sale right now will go off sale. So if you're not watching this live, I apologize. There'll probably be some more things happening from time to time, but this was a cool thing to test out the new software. And, oh yeah, I forgot one last thing. People already knew this was happening if they were subscribed to the newsletter. And so I'll do a screencast real quick and show you how you do that newsletter, just so you guys can be on the know as well. Let me go to my website here. So right here, I've got 2 things actually that are new. If you click the YouTube newsletter, you can put your email address in right here. Let me make sure that's showing you guys right. It is. Okay. Put your email address in here. You subscribe, and then you get little extra notes and stuff from me through the newsletter. And this is the one that's for online. And then I also made this section over here that I'm going to try and expand out. And this is me starting to categorize my videos better because YouTube doesn't do a good job of it. So, you know, now you can come here, and if you're linking videos to people on, let's say, Facebook or something like that, you know, you can find some of the series. And like when plants, the next series comes out, it'll be down below it. And, you know, I've got lighting reviews here of, you know, some of the lights and breeding fish for profit series. So I'm trying to make stuff a little easier to find because people ask questions. I know I have a video on it already, but it's like I should probably add in the tutorial like how to breed guppies or, you know, at least how to breed fish, and they can dig through the videos on there. So anyway, make sure you guys sign up, and we'll get you back to a normal screen. And, you know, make sure you sign up. And we'll see you in the next one. And I just got to click a button and I'm out of here. So thanks for watching, guys.